Good afternoon, and I would love to welcome you today, this snowy day, to the Vanderbilt University 2024 Martin Luther King Jr. Day Commemoration. My name is Yolanda Pierce, and I am honored to serve as the Dean of the Divinity School here at Vanderbilt University. It is not a flashback. We are on Zoom once again, and we just want to simply remind you that because it is Zoom, there might be some technical difficulties. In case we lose the speaker or any of the speakers or during the Q&A, we ask for your patience, we ask for your kindness, allow us to do whatever we need to do in the back room to get us back online. If we lose the speaker and are unable for whatever reason to have him return, we will be sure to record his remarks. But we are grateful for the technology that allows us to be present today. So the theme of this year's MLK Day commemoration is One Vanderbilt, One Nashville, One Dream. I love that because it allows us to recognize some of Nashville's own participants in human rights and freedom struggles, including our very own Reverend James Lawson, Diane Nash, and C.T. Vivian, and John Lewis. I also love to call the roll of other names involved in freedom struggles who worked with Dr. King. And because of their labors, we are present here today in his honor. And they include others like Bayard Rustin and Daisy Bates, Andrew Young and Pauli Murray, Charles Hamilton Houston and Rosa Parks and Ella Baker, and of course, someone like Thurgood Marshall. We are here this afternoon to honor one of the leaders of one of the greatest freedom struggles that this country and this world has known. Dr. King, I'd love to remind you, was a PhD-trained theologian. His ministry, activism, work for justice was a product of both his time in the Black church as well as his academic preparation. His philosophy was shaped by the songs, the stories, the scripture, the rhythms that he heard week after week and Sunday after Sunday, but also shaped by the books, the texts, the teachers, the professors that he read, that he encountered at Morehouse and then later at Boston. Head and heart together shaped the life of Dr. King, the intellectual fervor that he brought to his work, as well as the deep ethical, moral, principled endeavors. We honor his life. We celebrate the freedom struggles, the fight for human rights, equality, and dignity that he has embodied. And now we want to share our MLK Day of Service video, a compilation of students, alumni, and university presidents here in Nashville. And we welcome you to enjoy this brief video before we recognize our Chancellor and our guest speaker.
The spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. lives in Nashville.
It lives in our history as a battleground for civil rights.
It lives in the contributions of Nashville college students who went on to become civil rights pioneers themselves.
And it lives in Nashville's colleges and universities as we continue to advance Dr. King's legacy by enabling discovery, increasing understanding, and illuminating the human experience we all share.
Just 6 decades ago, lunch counter sit-ins by courageous local college students marked the beginning of the end of segregation in our city.
These prompted a visit by Dr. King, who said he came to Nashville to gain inspiration, not bring it.
And indeed, a remarkable number of those students went on to become inspiring heroes themselves,
including James Lawson, whose church basement trainings on nonviolent action laid the groundwork for the sit-ins and other pivotal protests.
Diane Nash, who organized the Freedom Rides.
And the movement that inspired passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
And John Lewis, who gave a fierce speech at the March on Washington, was bloodied crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and served 33 years as America's conscience in Congress.
Today, Nashville's history of advancing civil rights is still being written, and the city's rich mix of colleges and universities plays a vital role.
On our campuses, people of diverse backgrounds come together to connect through all that we have in common.
Learn from our differences.
And vigorously examine the ideas and innovations that form the foundation for the future.
The spirit of Dr. King lives in Nashville.
It lives in today's joint day of service, and it lives in all of you.
Today, we gather to show the world that Dr. King's words still speak to us.
His work continues, and his legacy is a living thing that finds its shape in our hearts and, most important, our actions.
This day is more essential than ever. Coming together in service affirms the values that Dr. King promoted and rejects the divisions that weaken our nation.
Thank you for giving your time today.
Thank you for your commitment to furthering Dr. King's work.
And thank you for again demonstrating what Dr. King and his fellow trailblazers showed us all these years ago.
That when it comes to lifting up our communities,
standing up for what is right,
and creating a more just society,
we are always strongest when we act together.
It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce the 9th Chancellor of Vanderbilt University, Dr. Daniel Diermeier.
Well, thank you, Dean Pierce, and good afternoon. It's my great honor to be here and welcome everyone to today's presentation as part of Vanderbilt University's annual celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today, our community joins the nation and the world in what has become really a sacred American tradition, when we not only honor the life and legacy of Dr. King, but we reflect on his lasting vision and consider what more that we as a society need to do for all the elements of that vision to be achieved. And this year's keynote theme speaks to an element that is particularly vital right now. Simply stated, one Vanderbilt, one Nashville, one dream is about what it means to belong to a community and to a common purpose, in which people with many distinct viewpoints come together and, with a shared dream of a better world for all, act as one. But of course, we know that this is much more simply said than it is done. And we cannot gather today in this proud celebration of justice and peace without the painful awareness of human suffering caused by our current conditions, including the brutal conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, the violence, poverty, and social injustice plaguing our cities and schools, and the intense polarization and hatred that threatens our very democracy, all at a time when working together is precisely what's needed to solve the urgent and complex challenges facing our world. Indeed, for our anxious, contentious, and intolerant times, there are no easy solutions. However, we can easily find in the legacy of Dr. King not only an abiding source of strength and hope, but a way to move forward by proceeding from the core values of belonging, civil discourse, and nonviolent protest that he demonstrated, in which he, along with so many others, heroically put into peaceful action. However, marching ahead, even while being literally beaten back time and again by vitriol, by violence, and by injustice. It is important to remember that Dr. King's lesson is twofold. First, there is the fierce commitment to overcoming social injustice, grounded in his firm belief that the moral arc of the universe is long, but that it bends towards justice. But in our troubled, polarized times, it is also King's second lesson that particularly deserves our attention: his commitment to nonviolent protest. This commitment at the time was deeply contested, Other activists were willing to end racial discrimination by any means necessary, including the use of violence. But Dr. King's movement was grounded in nonviolence because he believed overall in humanity's essential goodness, that only love can conquer hate, that the only way to build a more just nation was to do it together. He believed in winning over his opponents, in part by calling upon their shared humanity and challenging them to live up to the fundamental values they held in common. It was a philosophy he shared with Reverend James Lawson, who famously was expelled from Vanderbilt in 1960 for his role in organizing the lunch counter sit-ins, and who, living his message of love and forgiveness, later famously reconciled with the university. Reverend Lawson is now among our most revered alumni, and his work continues at Vanderbilt to the James Lawson Institute for the Research and Study of Nonviolent Movements. The principle of nonviolence, you see, works by an appeal to the other side's better angels. And for that to work, we must believe that those angels exist, and we must welcome them in. It took decades for Vanderbilt to welcome James Lawson back. However, I argued that the work that it took for that to happen had already started in 1967 at a two-day event called the Impact Symposium. That weekend, Dr. King was welcomed to Vanderbilt, along with such diverse individuals as Stokely Carmichael, Allen Ginsberg, and Storm Thurmond, to speak to a crowd of roughly 5,000 people in Memorial Gym. At the time, this peaceful gathering of such diverse speakers was truly groundbreaking, and many alumni, board members, state legislators, and local business leaders heavily criticized Vanderbilt Chancellor Alexander Hurd for inviting so many figures who could potentially bring radical conflict and political tension to campus. Hurd was viciously attacked in the local press, who called for his resignation. But Chancellor Hurd would not turn back. This was part of the open forum concept that he staunchly maintained was a key societal function of the university. The Vanderbilt campus, he said, must be a place where the free flow of ideas, even controversial ideas, was not only accepted, but encouraged. In other words, disagreement, even intense disagreement, is not the problem per se, provided all voices in the room are present and all voices are respected. As Dr. King said, true peace is not the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. College students have always been passionately engaged in the social history of their own times. And Chancellor Hurd wanted the Vanderbilt students of his time to hear as many voices as possible, and moreover, to learn how to use their own voices to constructively debate the broadest possible range of ideas, because he believed this was the best possible way forward toward the solutions that could move society ahead. And so it came that in the April of 1967, only and almost exactly 1 year before his assassination, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke here at Vanderbilt. Now, in 2024, this solemn message from the past should give us pause. We must consider what it means for us, not only where we might be today without Dr. King's visions, but where we will take it from here. And in that lofty pursuit, we must ask ourselves, how do we begin? My friends, we begin in exactly the same way as we did on that April week in Memorial Gym, by creating a place where all people belong and all voices may be peacefully heard. Last fall, Vanderbilt launched a program with this precise goal in mind. The Dialogue Vanderbilt, we're providing resources to help restore standards of civil discourse and mutual respect. We are fostering meaningful conversations that aren't always easy, but that can ultimately lead to common ground and actionable steps. We're striving to give our students, who comprise the next generation of leaders and dreamers, the tools they will need to improve the world, including both how to speak up and how to listen, how to understand, to reflect, respectfully challenge, but also how to effectively compromise with others for the sake of needed change. Today's event is an example of the kind of enriching conversations that take place here. And it is appropriate that our keynote speaker, Khalil Ekulona, is someone who served our local community through that same vital function. In his role as host of WPLN's This is Nashville, Khalil has created a forum for the voices of our city to come together, to be uplifted and celebrated, to be analyzed and challenged, and most importantly, to be broadly heard. These voices are richly diverse, and they're many, but the show's title, This is Nashville, is singular, one. In other words, this is what we as a city are together. On behalf of Vanderbilt, I'm honored to welcome Mr. Ekulona and to extend my deep gratitude for his commitment to free expression and civil discourse, which is undeniably helping in moving our great city forward. And to all in the Vanderbilt community, and especially our students, as you celebrate Dr. King this year, and as you move forward in your learning and in your lives, please always take these words drawn from his I Have a Dream speech to heart. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor, for your remarks. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker. Khalil Ekulona's life story is one that is based on curiosity and authenticity. Growing up in the suburbs of Baltimore gave him the opportunity to enjoy both the carefree days of youth and the vibrancy that is city life. While attending Elon University, he began to hone his voice and leadership skills through his activities in student government. He then made a shocking decision that some others, including myself, has made. He pursued the creative arts rather than a career in politics that he himself believed that he was destined for. That choice brought him to Los Angeles in the 1990s, and there he became a founding member of the hip hop group Fresh Air, which is now your favorite group that you have never heard of. And he entered the world of education. It was his years teaching at an alternative high school for at-risk teens that gave him a deeper perspective on the connections of humans and our shared problems and joys. In his travels, he learned more about what connects us and what we as human beings desire most for ourselves and our loved ones. Moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico, he was able to connect with himself and ask the questions that we ask. What is my purpose? He got his broadcast start as the co-host of Good Day New Mexico in Albuquerque. From there, he became a correspondent with New Mexico Public Television and a sports anchor at UPublic Network. In 2019, he began working with NPR affiliate KUNM. There, he co-produced and hosted Your New Mexico Government and the award-winning podcast, No More Normal, both of which covered the government, world, and local events during the pandemic. In 2021, he moved to Nashville, and he became the inaugural host of This is Nashville, the flagship daily show on WPLN 90.3 FM, a show that aims to exhibit the connections of human beings regardless of identity or political affiliation. He takes life one day at a time, open to new experiences, and that's how he got to where he is today. He wanted us to mention that he is a dedicated cat dad, and he loves to seek out laughter, because laughter is the perfect way to heal any wound. Following his remarks, Dr. Roosevelt Noble, who is the Associate Dean of Students for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, will facilitate a brief Q&A. But I invite you now to please join me in welcoming to virtual Vanderbilt University, Mr. Khalil Ekulona.
Thank you, Dean Pierce, Chancellor Diermeier, and most importantly, the students of Vanderbilt University for bestowing me the honor of speaking to you on this very special day. Seeing that I'm at home, I want to let you know that we may have some feline visitors pop up during my remarks, but I think since the pandemic, we all gotten used to that sort of thing. Now, to address the good people from Vanderbilt and this distinguished place of higher learning about the legacy of Dr. King is not a task that I nor my family take lightly. So to that beginning, I'm going to spend this time today offering stories, reflections, and inquiries about how we might invite that legacy to embody us. I come from a clan where spirit, righteousness, drive, and a well-timed joke are the only currencies that matter. My parents were not much older than many of the students watching today when Dr. King was taken from us. Using Dr. King's legacy and the inherited morals and values of their parents, my folks provided the type of stability that allowed my siblings and I to develop our own characters as we saw fit. Through lessons from the past, they reminded us that we are of the generation that has the options of making choices. Choices like, what do I want to do? My parents are like many of your parents and grandparents who took Dr. King's dream and gifted it to the next generation. To us. Now, my first memories of life are with no restrictions, absolutely none. My parents say that I took advantage of this most often when I was a toddler. Apparently back then, I would often decide that I didn't want to wear any clothes, and I wouldn't. According to my mother, it became routine for neighbors to knock on the door of the house. My clothes in one arm, me naked as a jaybird in the other. It was the mid-1970s in Darby, southwest of Philadelphia, a diverse neighborhood of families making their way in life as best they could, given that the country was reeling from the end of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal. In the neighborhood stood a house where the Darby Friends meeting would take place. This house was built by Quakers in 1805. The Darby Friends meeting traces back to William Penn's arrival to establish the colony of Pennsylvania. It was on our country's bicentennial, July 4th, 1976, that I had an important memory. My father worked as a producer and reporter for Channel 6 News. He was very, very busy in 76. There was a presidential election and the nation was preparing to celebrate for 200 years of existence. On Independence Day, my father and his crew decided to cover the people's protest. He knew that all the news stations, including his, would be at the Liberty Bell with President Ford. He wanted to make sure that everyone who watched the news could see the other side of 200 years. Thousands of people from all nationalities arrived in Philly and marched together, chanting what I may say is the very 70s protest slogan, "We've carried the rich for 200 years. Let's get them off our backs." Now, young people, you have to understand, that is very 70s. Get off my back, man. It's true, but it's 70s. Now, my father wanted to bring the family to the protest, and my mother thought this would be a fabulous idea. Seeing that she had 3 children to clean up and get ready, my 2 older sisters and myself, she knew the easiest maneuver would be to get me cleaned up and dressed first. Then she could tackle my sisters, ensuring that their outfits and their braids would perfectly match. She got me ready, put me in the backyard to play. When the time came for us to leave, they couldn't find me. As they searched the backyard, my mother noticed a shoe. Then a few yards away, she saw my other shoe. Then my right sock and my left. As they followed my trail of clothes, my parents realized where they were headed: to the Darby Friends meeting. If you've ever kicked it with Quakers, you'll notice that their spiritual services are quite unique. There's no preacher or reverend leading the service. They sit in silence and rise to speak only when moved to do so by the Word of God. I highly recommend it if you haven't. It's deep. Now, on that day, I was moved by God to join the members of the Darby Friends meeting for their service on what happened to land on our nation's bicentennial. In that old building, surrounded by older Quakers, all white, I, a naked Black boy, was there, not quite 3 years old. I remember seeing an American flag and a colonial flag on the wall. I remember seeing smiling faces. No one grabbed me. No one told me to leave. So I kindly found myself a seat and proceeded to hang. After some time, my sister touched me on the shoulder, telling me, "Come on, Khalil, mommy's looking for you." And I walked down the aisle toward my awaiting parents, glancing upon the smiles of the Darby Friends, smiling at me as if I reminded them of something on that day of remembrance, celebration, and protest. For me that day, that moment, signaled an anointing and a realization of Dr. King's dream. My life has taken me to many parts of this country, where I've been able to meet and break bread with countless Americans and people from across the globe. I've walked into rooms and spaces where I was judged by the color of my skin. But when I left those rooms and spaces, I was experienced by the content of my character. Now, I'm not the only one who's been living Dr. King's dream. Many of you who are watching online are living it as well. So, what is our duty as stewards and livers of this most exquisite dream of human evolutionary capacity? We have to ensure that every person can live Dr. King's dream as well. To do that, we must use grace, integrity, honesty, and understanding. These 4 traits establish the action and spirit of what it means to love. We have to look beyond our politics to truly understand ourselves and each other as humans. Politics may seem omnipresent, particularly with our news cycles and these broadcast devices in our pockets. But politics isn't life, and politics isn't permanent. The political issues of today are not what they were 100 years ago, and they'll be something different 100 years from now. Hopefully, we humans will be here in 100 years. So if we can't get our politics understood, at least we can understand each other. Now, today, this is really hard to do. Our societal framework at play, it wants us to fight. It wants us to bicker and attack each other. For it, the framework, it is bereft of concern for our well-being as humans. And if it can get us to create discord with each other, well, that is a lot less work it has to do to prevent us from living to our full potential. Dr. King's dream requires us to evolve beyond unrighteous discord. It guides us gently toward the permanence of progress. Perspective helps to aid our evolution. What can help to gain perspective? Grace, integrity, honesty, and understanding. I gained some perspective in the summer of 1994 working as an intern in Washington, D.C. On this day, June 17th to be exact, I was at the D.C. Superior Courthouse to meet one of the public defenders I was interning for. I was grabbing some coffee, then I noticed many, if not all, of the adults vanished from the halls. Where were they? Well, they were watching a white Bronco lead a police chase down the 405 freeway. Now, for the younger people watching, Google what happened on the 405 freeway on June 17th. You'll find out. Out in the halls, while the adults were watching this, were dozens upon dozens of unattended kids. I heard a voice and I felt within myself that said, someone has to take care of them. It was then that I understood grace. 1 year later, as a recent college graduate, I worked at a camp counselor for the Rites of Passage Collective in Baltimore. My group of campers, adorable, 5 to 8-year-old boys. Now, one day during lunch, I noticed one of my boys was barely eating. He took a couple bites of his food, but packed up his rest of his sandwich, his chips, and his drink in his bag. And I asked him, why didn't he eat his food? He looked at me, 6 years old, and said that he was saving it for his brothers and sisters back home. And he began to cry. I cried with him. It was then that I understood integrity. Years later, These experiences led me to work in education when I lived in Los Angeles, chasing the dream of becoming a hip hop star. Now, in 2002, I began working at the Poseidon School. It's what some people would call an alternative high school. It serves kids who, in essence, got kicked out of high school. I had students from Compton and Watts. I had students from the barrios of East LA. I had students from Beverly Hills and Bel Air. I learned there that neglect is neglect, no matter the tax bracket. It was then that I understood honesty, that accepts that some are at a disadvantage, but we do not judge. We help them to jump the hurdle. My classes were small, 10, 12, 13 students max, each with their own education plan, while my teaching assistants and I worked really hard to make sure that each student fulfilled their plans. I recognized that there was a need to fill large gaps in their learning. So with the autonomy that my administrators provided, I created a general curriculum for them. Now, for example, vocabulary. I used words in the GRE exam as their vocabulary. After having them search the dictionary for definitions, I would have them translate those words into their own language, to take these academic terms and translate them into slang. They would ask me, Khalil, why do we have to do this? And I told them I wanted them to have the ability to be in conversation with their professor and their homeboy simultaneously, acting as a moderator of sorts. I've learned that understanding language and its many uses as a tool is what forges honesty when interacting with others. At that time, I had many remarkable students, but one student in particular befuddled me. He would show up to school on Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays, but he would vanish until Fridays. Now, what got me was the fact that he aced all of my tests. Initially, I was convinced that he was cheating. And as the weeks went on, I thought something very, very different. Then one night, Saturday night in the club in Hollywood, no less that it dawned on me that this kid may have a photographic memory. So excited by this revelation, I spread napkins all over the corner of the bar that I took over, and I was vigorously coming up with lesson plans for this newfound genius I had on my hands. His attendance was really spotty because he was the son of a notable gangster from East LA, a man with a sizable reputation in the streets. And as his son, my student was afforded tremendous amounts of street cred, but also faced potential risks. And I thought to myself, well, with a photographic memory, he can leave that life behind to do whatever he wants, make choices. Sunday morning, I called my vice principal and I told her of my idea, what I come up with. She agreed, and we made plans to get all of the requisite testing done that coming week and the weeks to follow. And so excited to dive into this student's potential, I walk into the front office on Monday morning and I met teary eyes and heavy hearts. My student with the photographic memory was murdered early that morning. I learned understanding then. Understanding that life is not fair. Understanding that life is short. Understanding that if you're lucky, life can be long. Over a decade later, I took that understanding to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, after some time, I found myself hosting and co-producing a podcast for the local NPR affiliate. We were covering the pandemic. It was June of 2020, so many of you may remember what was happening. Led by the youth, millions of Americans took to the streets to demand justice after the killing of George Floyd. Situations and people were hot, and in Albuquerque, the temperature was rising, just like the fists of protest. My brilliant colleague, she devised a plan and coordinated 3 different newsrooms to cover the protests. And let me give you some context. You see, at that time, militias popped up, replete with tactical gear and AR-15s to monitor the protests and what they called protecting property. Both the militias and some law enforcement didn't really appreciate the coverage we were doing on them and of their activities, and my colleague knew that things would get hot on the streets during the protest. So she organized for members of these 3 newsrooms to listen to police scanners while sharing information over encrypted messaging apps to the journalists who were on the ground, so they would know about police movement and militia activity, and so they could watch their backs. A call came over the scanners that tensions were rising between a group of about 10 protesters and 6 armed militiamen, all at a local 7-Eleven. Now, I lived off of Route 66, the famed Route 66. It's where all the protests happened. And that 7-Eleven was blocks away from my house. Cars zipping up and down my residential street, either to move around the thousands of marchers or to signal their support. Helicopters flying above while I listened to the scanner. At 10:30 at night, there was a knock on my front door. I answered, and it was a man who was a member of many militias over his lifetime, including the 3%ers. He knocked on my door asking to talk with me. He too was listening to the police scanners and knew of the potential for violence at the 7-Eleven mere blocks away. He said he knocked on my door because he knew that I could help him. He told me that those kids, these militiamen, were new and a little hot-headed. He wanted my help in helping to get a message across, telling them to de-escalate, leave, and go home. Why did he come to my door? Yeah, he heard me on the radio. He knew what I was a part of and the reporting and interviews that I had been doing. But he came to my door because the previous year, he was on the crew that repaired our roof and front porch. I would sit outside with my morning coffee and talk with he and the crew about everything. Politics came up, and trust me, it did. I used honesty and integrity and grace to help us come to understanding. He invited me to join him and his brothers in arms as they went to protect the southern border of New Mexico. I kindly declined. But whenever we talked about our very opposing views, I didn't cut him off, and I didn't refuse to talk with him. I heard him and his story. Without judgment, I saw him as a human being who had different political views than I. This created understanding, which gave birth to trust. A trust so deep that he would knock on my door as fuses are lit across the city to help ensure peace, if only for that night. This is the type of integrity that we need if we're going to address the issues that all humans face. We must cherish and maintain our integrity because today, the price value of integrity is at an all-time high. In our current world, you can sell your integrity for the bag now and spend the rest of your life searching for your integrity in that bag. We have to recognize general understanding is needed, for the exuberance of youth is nothing without the guidance of wisdom. To me, baby boomers and millennials are at odds because they're one and the same. This is a Generation X speaker, but hear me out. Baby boomers were the test subjects for American consumerism, and television was the means to get that programming through. Millennials were the latest version, and they had social media and the internet as their hypnotic device. Millennials and Gen Z, I ask that you have understanding for boomers, for many of them were just like you. Remember, my parents were your age when Dr. King was taken from us. What type of bitterness do you think that creates when heroes of the youth are taken from them in front of their faces? Just yesterday, I was talking with my mother, and she was telling me what it was like the day she heard, the minute and second she heard that Dr. King was killed. She lived in Manhattan on the 7th floor, and my grandmother had her clean the windows, and my mother, kind of halfway hanging out the window, was cleaning, and she heard someone scream and say Dr. King was killed. My mother told me she almost fell out of that 7th-story window. Then in the days later, she had a job working. She had to walk down 42nd Street. And she said days later when she's on the A train, taking that train down, to people who would refuse to get up for her before Dr. King was taken, offered their seat and showed grace to her. And she said countless stranger upon stranger, non-Black people were coming up to her saying that they were sorry. They were showing grace. Now, if we're going to recognize trauma, we have to recognize the traumas, and we have to allow grace for understanding of each other. To hold our ethics and morals close to us, no matter who you are, what you look like, or how you identify. Decency is what is expected of the blessed. And just in case you forgot, all of us are blessed. Now we have to do what's expected. My good friend, my brother, he says we're all here right now for a reason. As Dr. King was on the planet in his time for a reason. to give us guidance on how we can evolve and grow. Dr. King, like Malcolm X, was taken from us when he was only 39 years old. He didn't have a chance to finish, to grow older and wiser. Yet the wisdom he gifted us is lasting and it remains fertile. It's upon us at this time to cultivate it. I like to think that we're all here for a divine purpose. Right now, we are all active duty members in the forces of existence. Membership requirement? Easy. You're alive. The whole point of life is to make sure that more life comes while you operate in love, which is the fulfillment of grace, integrity, honesty, and understanding. When you think about your activity in this force of existence, the question you must first ask this of your spirit. Did your soul volunteer to be here, or were you drafted? I'm going to say that again. Did your soul volunteer to be here, or were you drafted? Any answer you come up with is fine. We don't know if Dr. King was drafted or if he volunteered, but he clearly came here equipped with grace, integrity, honesty, and understanding, in the hopes that if we didn't have our own, we would watch and create some based on the love he showed humanity. When I ask that question of myself, I feel like I was drafted. I think I went something like this. The panel of creations like, Spirit of Khalil, we've been after you, attempting to get a hold of you for about 10,000 years, and we know you've received our notices. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? You said it was the last time. All right, if I'm going to go ahead and do this, I'm going to go ahead and be born. Let me pack some grace, integrity, honesty, and understanding for the trip. So to end and go back to the beginning, how will you reflect on your life as you move through? What did you bring for the journey? When were you anointed? How do you embody the legacy and dream of Dr. King? Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Khalil. That was a very powerful and moving story. So much so that it has inspired me to do something that I normally don't like to do. I'm a conversationalist, and I got to go off script with my first question. The art of storytelling is a gift and a craft that you have been blessed with. Tell me, what is the source? How did you hone that craft? Because I could sit here and listen to you all day, and I will go ahead and also honestly fess up to something. There have been many a day when I've been traveling somewhere and hear one of your episodes of This Is Nashville, and I'm sitting in the parking lot because I got to wait for the story to end. Phenomenal storyteller. How did you hone that craft?
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you had, in the station, we love calling them, we call them parking lot moments, driveway moments. So bosses, hey, we're doing a good job. It's inherited. I remember being a young child and watching my grandparents, my grandmother, capture the room during the holidays and tell stories. And I think certain people, particularly from the African-American community, and I think others understand like a thing called The Shining, where there's unspoken communication occurring. And my grandmother would be up there regaling the family with stories of how, I believe it was, my father will have to correct me, maybe during the 60s, Stokely Carmichael was hiding in my grandparents' attic for a while when he was being searched for by the FBI. I think the statute of limitations has passed, so I'm sorry. But she would tell these stories and the whole family would be around. And my grandmother was such a masterful storyteller. She would begin the story and other people would fill in elements and she would continue to tie it back in. But the entire time she would glance over at her grandchildren and just look at us and nod like, do you see what I'm doing? Do you see this? Later on, both of my parents, they took my siblings and I, when we would go to performances, they would say, don't just look at the person the spotlight is on, pay attention to everything. Pay attention to the people backstage. Watch, the guitar string broke. Did you see them replace that guitar with no beat? You know, they had us watch and absorb everything. And like I said, my family, a well-timed joke and a wonderful story is incredible currency. So my parents encouraged us to go out there and to be able to make stories of our own so we could therefore tell them. And, a lot of the stories you hear on This Is Nashville are not solely me. It's the wonderful team of the people who initially came, the initial team to create the show, and the current iteration of the team now. It is an incredible effort. Sometimes they come to me with story, and I feel blessed because sometimes I feel like I have the easy job where I just get to have the conversations with people. But curiosity, I think curiosity and observation is where, at least I think, my gift of storytelling comes from.
Thank you. One of my, I share in a passion that you have, which is talking and engaging with people. I often say I like to never miss an opportunity to make a new friend. But one of the things I've discovered is that in this day and age, everybody has this in their hand. And whether it's standing in line at a coffee shop, on an elevator, oftentimes technology kind of gets in the way of us conversing and getting to know people. From your perspective, in what ways has the art of talking kind of been hindered by technology and our phones and things of that nature?
It makes it too easy for us to hide. When I was teaching in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it was time for college essays and things, and the students are worrying because they got to go online, and these are big questions of where they're going to apply for college. The entire process of applying for college was confusing, yet they're constantly referred to go online. And I told them, pick up the phone and call. You got to be able to give good phone. And if you can't, you have a problem. Old school. I'm of the age where I had to call these colleges and ask them questions. And I forced them to do it, and they didn't know how. So I taught them how to make a phone call, because it's too easy for us to hide behind our devices and not necessarily show ourselves. If you're talking to me on the phone, I could be distracted doing something else, but you can hear the intonation of my voice. You can hear the passion or any emotion that you put behind whatever particular statement you're making at that time. But it's very, very important. It makes it too easy for us to disconnect from each other, yet feeling like we're connected. Yes, it's wonderful. I'm here right now. The snow years ago, the snow would have prevented this from happening. So I can be here to address you. And that's a useful, a helpful tool of technology, but let's not make it a crutch for us. Let's get out. I know sometimes I'm a person who loved public transportation and take cabs and Ubers. If I get in a cab or an Uber, I know a lot of people are like, don't talk to me. I'm on my phone. Leave me alone. I'm talking to the Uber driver. You never know what stories you're going to hear from people. Why not? And ask and be curious about things. It doesn't hurt at all. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So I say, stay away from the crutch, take a risk, and get to know another human being, because most of them don't bite.
Do you find that people are surprised sometimes when you strike up and start conversation? I don't know. I almost was like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. People are like, why are you talking to me? I'm like, you seem like a nice person. Let's learn. Some of the most brilliant, wonderful lessons in life I learned sitting at the bus stop in Los Angeles, talking to folks. This is before, we had cell phones, but not smartphones, and talking to people. I learned about patience sitting next to an 83-year-old man, and we let 4 buses pass by while he told me never to see this man again, but stopping and learning, stopping and listening, young people can learn things from older folks. Older folks can learn things from younger people. We separate ourselves. It's too easy for my device to give me my preferences, but life doesn't always come in your preferences. Life comes. You have to adapt. So, our devices are wonderful and brilliant, but let's not rely on them too much.
Yeah. I want to shift and talk about your series, This Is Nashville. You've explored several interesting experiences and places within the city. When people ask you about Nashville, what are some must-see things or experiences that you recommend that capture the true essence of our city?
I have yet to attend a show at the Ryman or any of those classic things. I say get out and meet people. Hit up Nolensville, Pike, and see the international flavors of this city. I'm a hip hop fan, and one of the first things I did, my good friend, big fella Willie Sims, took me out to Boom Bap, and I saw it. And to me, to this day, I think that's the most diverse thing I'd ever been to in Nashville. So many people from all over, different generations, different identity types, different ethnicities coming there to celebrate what we call classic hip hop. That was a wonderful event. There are so many things. The Chinese New Year is coming up. The Muslim community celebrates Eid, which is coming up, I believe, in March or April. Go out. These are open. These are open and free to everyone. You know, you can go see those things. Almost anything you do in Nashville will help give you a flavor of the city. But it's interesting because I've only been here for almost 2.5 years. And so many people have been telling me of how Nashville has changed. So it's in this evolution point. And there's some parts of old Nashville that I cannot experience. But, the show has really, it's been a blessing because I've been able to meet so many people. I hung out with a rodeo. Well, they would be called rodeo clowns, but the rodeos happen in Springfield, and it's pretty cool. Why not go and see what's up? Let's be curious. Again, taking it back to our devices. We're on our devices and we express curiosity, but then there's opportunity for us to be in person and express curiosity, and it's okay to be shy. Just get over it and go see. So it's almost anything you decide to do in Nashville is going to be a wonderful and unique experience. And there's a lot more that I hope to be able to experience for myself.
You reference change and some of the changes that have occurred in Nashville. As someone who's not a native Nashvilleian, but who's been here 30 years and feel like I have to claim it at this point. You've seen in some of your stories the ways in which change, for the good or the bad, has happened in Nashville. In what ways would you say that change has been a good thing as well as a bad thing for the city of Nashville based on the stories that you've covered?
From what I've learned, and this is just me and what I've learned, I'm not speaking for Nashville Public Radio or anyone on the team. I think some good things about Nashville is that you got so many people from different places coming to this city for a very long time to offer their talents, to come to this place and to help it grow. Nashville is the smallest big city in the country. The Nashville of 30 years ago is not really going to come back. It is a metropolitan place. Nashville has to decide if it wants to remain a nice small city or it wants to be metropolitan. I think it's impossible for both to happen simultaneously. But also at the same time, I think something that's hurt Nashville is the fact that everybody is coming here. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and that is a place known for opportunity. And one of the negative stereotypes about Los Angeles is that people are flaky and they're inauthentic. Well, whenever a land or an area or a town or a city is known for opportunity and it's flashing out, announcing to the world, come here, there's opportunity, people will act personally in accordance to whatever they think will give them that opportunity. It won't necessarily be themselves. If I'm myself, will I have access to these opportunities? So it kind of leads to a little bit more inauthenticity, a little bit more what we could call flakiness within folks. And so I think it's up to the people of Nashville, the ones who were born and raised here, the ones who've lived here for decades, new arrivals like myself, even people curious about moving to Nashville, come here and be honest and be real about who you are. The city has grown very fast. We can see today with the snow, infrastructure has kind of gotten away from the city and their grasp. That is something to think about because there's only going to be more people coming and our climate is only going to be doing more things to change. And so it's best to be able to stay up to that. But Nashville has to remember who built this place and who was here, and give opportunities to everyone. Yeah, there's a lot of businesses coming. There's a lot of commerce and opportunities for businesses. But does everyone in Nashville have an opportunity to benefit from these businesses and coming here? I don't think so as of yet. And it's up to our leaders, not just our political leaders, not just leaders of education institutions, and not just up to faith leaders as well. It's up to leaders in communities, leaders within families and friend groups to get up, to stand up and to say that we want more for everybody. It can happen. It can happen. It's not impossible. I think selfishness has to take a firm back seat. Actually, just kick selfishness out the car in general. And let's ride to someplace altogether where Nashville can be. That's something that we want to do, not only with This Is Nashville, inform people about Nashville who've lived here. But if someone lives across the country and they're thinking about moving here, tune into this show. We'll give you a lot of things that you need, but we'll also let you know that this place is authentic and it needs authentic people to truly, live up to its potential.
Thank you. I want to ask one last question in the time that we have. One of the things that I love to do is to talk to students about what it is that they want to do with their lives. And I live with first-year students to give you some context. Oftentimes, students have this very linear concept of, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. Listening to your background and your lived experience is similar to mine in that life is very unpredictable. You never know where you're going to be from spot to spot.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to our students, or anyone for that matter, about the unpredictability of life and finding your passions?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, particularly when you're young. Don't be afraid to leave. If you grew up here and you want to see another part of the world or live somewhere else, go. And I say, don't say you grew up in Nashville, I want to live in Denver. And you go out to Denver for 6 months or a year and you're like, I don't like it, I'm coming home. That's not enough time. Give yourself 2 years to discover if a place is for you. There's more that you can learn, again, if you're coming to be curious. And always be ready. I didn't get my broadcasting start until 2013. And when the opportunity came, I was substitute teaching. I was teaching an elective class at that same school when I wasn't subbing on sitcom writing. I'm working at a wonderful Black-owned brewery in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm doing these things and making music and just living. But this opportunity for me to get into broadcasting came, and everyone, my bosses, everyone said, this is wonderful, Khalil, do this. And after 3 months, come back. And I told them no. Because I had always told my students from Los Angeles, from elementary school to the Poseidon School to Amy Beale School is the school I'm referring in Albuquerque. I always said, you never know when this chance is going to come. You have to be able to take it. And I felt that if I came back after 3 months, it would be like, oh, Khalil had this wonderful experience and now he's back. But what would that mean to the kids that I'd been given this philosophy to, that I inspired? So I took that choice and led me here, led me absolutely here. And the messages I get from former students from Los Angeles, from New Mexico, that say, you are still inspiring us. I'm 26 and I'm about to make this change. I'm 32 and I'm about to make this change. Go for it. Go for it. Our society, again, when I talk about the societal frameworks that wants to stunt our ability to evolve, trust me, my parents say it all the time. I understand stability. I understand the need for stability and having stability. But sometimes that need for stability and fulfilling your purpose can be at odds. So what are you supposed to do? Go for it. Many cases, you can always go back home. There will be someone to help you. But if you look at the stories of our iconoclasts of society, they always broke free and did the opposite of what society told them to do. But we celebrate these iconoclasts. You should be like them. But then within particularly school systems, we said, oh, you gotta follow the rules. But the iconoclast that you're telling me to honor didn't follow the rules. What am I supposed to do? You've got to ask yourself what it is that I want. And that's really difficult to answer. Some people know what they want when they're young. My oldest sister is a master thespian, and I'm so proud of her. She knew from the minute she was 9 years old what she wanted to do, and she has studied for 43 years to become a master thespian. Some people figure it out a little bit later. That's fine. Don't compare yourself to others. Find yourself, find what inspires you, and be willing to do a lot of different things. And I remember when I was, and I'll end after this, I was teaching at the Poseidon School, and in 2007, Alvin Toffler, the futurist who wrote Future Shock, had another book come out called Generational Wealth, and he talked about the working world these days wouldn't be someone working for a company for 35, 40 years and you get your pension and watch and you go on. The person themselves will become their industry and business. So you can go on LinkedIn right now and you can see people who have a plethora of different skills, yet they market and package themselves as this person who can do a world of things. Yeah, that's great for the skills, for the workforce, but add to that world of things life as well. Become a master of life along with these skills, and then see what you can do.
I love that answer. Thank you for that. I thank you for giving us your time and being so honest and transparent. And I look forward to the many more episodes of This Is Nashville. While we still are in this recording, I do want to thank and acknowledge the members of the Vanderbilt MLK Day Planning Committee who worked so diligently, who some of the folks behind the scenes that helped us make this drastic pivot to what we had to pivot to. I wish we could have got a chance to hear you in person, but given how dynamic you came across in the virtual platform, we were truly blessed here as well. So I will turn it back over to Yolanda Pierce, who will take us out.
Thank you so much, Brother Khalil, for your wonderful remarks. And thank you, Dr. Noble. We are sitting here on the 95th birthday of Reverend King. And I want us to sit with, as we depart, the complicated legacy that King embodies for so many of us. He was a man who all of his life and his career promoted nonviolence, and yet dealt with daily the reality of a very violent world. He was a man who lived of the wages of justice, and yet, of course, dealt with such significant injustice in his life. King was a man who believed fervently in love and the power and capacity of love and the beloved community, and yet his life ended way too early, tragically, in an act of hatred. I mention that to say that we celebrate on this day the complexity of his life and legacy. He found a way to somehow still speak truth to power, somehow still affirm human dignity and agency, even in the complex situation in which he faced. He found a way as both preacher, theologian, father, husband, friend, to affirm what we call the Imago Dei, which is the image and likeness that we were all created by God. And so I leave you today with a profound thank you for joining us, and with a charge, that is the homework that you can do as a result of this conversation. And the homework is very simple. Love mercy, walk humbly, and do justice in honor, in memory, and commemoration of Dr. King. Thank you so much for joining us here at Vanderbilt University. We wish you a very safe King holiday, and we look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.